As someone who's been making Walking Dead content for over a year now, I've had the tremendous privilege of being able to share my thoughts on this incredible series and franchise with all of you. And as some of you clearly know, I've covered Shane Walsh quite a bit on this channel. Suffice it to say, Shane is the gift that keeps on giving. People love and glaze him, people hate and downplay him, and most of all, he makes my channel money. Precisely because Shane content is what my amazing viewers seem to crave. I've literally broken down his character, explained why he's a tragic villain, switched him with Rick in one large hypothetical thought experiment, explained why he was unfortunately correct to sacrifice Otis, and I've even gone as far as to give him a happy ending in my most recent What If video. And of all of these video essays, the one obvious conclusion any reasonably intelligent person should agree with me on is also, surprisingly, one of the most contentious claims I've made on this channel. Being that Shane's plan to take the Atlanta group to Fort Benning was a fantastically stupid plan. Oh, and I know what some of y'all are thinking. Don't you have a funny as fuck video on this already? Oh! Yes, I do have a video on this already, but it's long been demonetized by the greedy pig fuckers at AMC that have zero understanding of fair use law. That being said, I've decided to dedicate this video to obliterating, with extreme prejudice, the notion that heading to Fort Benning was ever a remotely good idea. Naturally, this means I'll be dissecting the topic in an absurdly thorough fashion, covering every last detail of this downright idiotic plan. And hopefully by the end of this video, some of you might learn a thing or two about critical thinking. So, setting all of that aside, let's begin by properly framing this discussion and also establishing some vitally important circumstantial contextual information. For starters, we're going to be covering this topic by eliminating our hindsight as viewers, hence only basing our rationale on what the characters knew and what they could have reasonably assumed. Because in canon, Fort Benning was literally confirmed to have been overrun during the onset of the Walker apocalypse. We're also going to be having this conversation as if we were a part of the Atlanta group itself right before they head out to the Atlanta CDC facility. As such, the group would be comprised of the already bitten Jim, Jackie, one of the brave members of the Unalive Squad, two literal children, the least competent version of Carol, the fairly useless trad wife with two boyfriends, Lori, some decrepit old man with the physical capabilities of Joe Biden, the least competent and most emotionally damaged version of Andrea, the virgin Glenn, the token black guy, Daryl, Shane, and Ricky Dicky Doodah Grimes. Morales, if you don't remember, left with his family just before our group traveled to the CDC. So, right off the bat, we have an inexperienced group which is traveling with quite a few liabilities, or more accurately, a ton of dead weight, while only possessing like 3 competent survivors who are basically in charge of hard-carrying 9 other fairly useless greenhorns, and one dude who's literally got 1 foot in the grave already. In layman's terms, the group's human capital is horrendously suboptimal. They're basically dog water with zero earnings. Now, in terms of supplies, the group pretty much has a few days worth of food, water, and fuel. It was so bad that Rick felt that they would all die if not for Jenner opening up the CDC to them. Then who could forget how happy they were when they found a water truck? This man legit wasted some good potable water in this scene, and he's supposed to be one of the more competent survivors. They also had, at their disposal, a barely functioning RV that always needed repairs, a few vehicles, and Daryl's motorbike. And let's not forget that they also have quite a few guns and ammunition, but not nearly enough to survive multiple prolonged firefights or contact with multiple medium to large-sized hordes. Now, let's just presuppose that you still want to go to Fort fucking Benning, despite all of the information I've just given you. Okay, I want you to ponder just how the logistics of such an operation would unfold. I also want you to think about a realistic risk assessment for this mission. Feel free to pause the video if you want to collect your thoughts before continuing to hear my take on this. So, how far is Fort Benning from the outskirts of Atlanta? Well, we don't know exactly where the camp was located in canon. We do know where it was filmed, being at the Westside Reservoir Park, but we really don't know the exact in-universe location. We can, however, come up with a rough estimate for how far the group would have had to travel by road to reach Fort Benning, which is currently known as Fort Moore in the real world. If the group were to take I-85 southbound, we're looking at a trip that easily covers more than 100 miles in distance. In terms of driving time, this should roughly be a 2-hour trip, assuming that nothing goes wrong. Along this route would be the towns of Noonan, Grantville, LaGrange, Pine Mountain, and the fairly sizable municipality of Columbus, with the municipality of Fort Mitchell being right next to Fort Benning. And it would be fair to assume that many segments of this highway will be inaccessible due to traffic congestion, or abandoned vehicles which essentially create mini blockades along the path to Fort Benning, just like the one our cast of survivors encountered during the Season 2 premiere. Given that the military firebombed Atlanta, it might also be safe to assume that some segments of the highway's infrastructure might be damaged or completely ruined due to unseen military actions. Since Fort Benning is a well-known location, you could as well safely assume that everyone and their fat mother would have gone to said military base during the initial outbreak, hence allowing you to deduce that the roads to Benning will definitely get more congested the closer you get to your destination. Each town connected to the highway would also likely be a traffic choke point, and obviously the dead would follow the living, meaning hordes will be present on or around the highway, likely being concentrated around these choke points, just as we saw in the Season 2 premiere. But the dead wouldn't be your only concern. Remember how the Vatos gang warned Rick about violent marauders? Clearly, it would be safe to assume that some dangerously deranged assholes probably went to Benning as well. Many might even have ambushes set up along the road to Benning. Like, if I were a morally bankrupt pillager, I'd sure as hell do that myself. So, given all of this information, it should be painfully easy to deduce that shit will go wrong multiple times on this journey. Our group will run into hordes, they will eventually run into violent gangs, and they will at some point be forced to take a few detours, further exacerbating the logistical hurdles associated with undergoing such an expedition. Each and every detour would present additional risks and would also further consume valuable fuel, while also further wearing down the RV. And unlike Atlanta, they'd have zero intel on any of the towns along the way, nor would they have any intel on whether or not Fort Benning is actually safe and whether or not it actually still has some useful supplies that hasn't been taken by various groups of desperate survivors. Fort Benning itself might even be under the control of a group like Terminus, utilizing the base as a giant mousetrap and magnet for survivors. Speaking of Fort Benning's ambiguous status in this thought experiment, let's just assume the military base is still standing, with the US military still being operational at said location. Shane saw the military indiscriminately firebomb Atlanta without warning, and he also saw the military indiscriminately execute civilians at the hospital Rick was staying at while he was under a coma. Given the evidence at hand, why would any reasonable person assume the military's attitude towards civvies has changed? Look around you, Shane. The world has ended. Why would the military have a change of heart? Then there's the reality of Fort Benning as a location. People hear military base and they assume it's a walled fortress. Fact of the matter is, Benning is a literal city. There is no walled perimeter with supremely secured access points. There's also no way a small group could ever hope to secure it on their own. Maybe they can secure a small portion of the base, but that wouldn't guarantee their safety. Far from it, it would be easy for hordes of the undead to sneak in, or even worse, it'd be far too easy for violent people to enter the base totally undetected. Contrary to popular belief, buildings make for far better concealment and cover than trees and bushes. Also, here's a little fun fact for you. Fort Benning is roughly 182,000 acres in size. That's basically 284 square miles of land. Do you really think 12 people with only 3 combat proficient dudes are going to secure all that? If you do, I've got a used condom to sell you. All things being considered, the trip to Benning amounts to a high-risk operation with no guarantee of there being a worthwhile reward at the end of said perilous journey. Now, I don't know about you, but taking on that level of risk for a reward that isn't even certain is just fucking retarded. Nevertheless, the Shane apologists are likely typing up some stupid shit in the comment section right now, so let's go ahead and debunk some of their arguments for fun.
Say what you will about Benning, Captain Dumbass, but it was better than the CDC.
For starters, Rick had no rationally compelling reason to deduce that the CDC would A, be home to a suicidal pro-mortalist virologist, and B, would blow the fuck up. That being said, they knew the layout of Atlanta. The group was literally conducting runs into and out of the city before Rick even showed up. So insofar as intel is concerned, they had plenty to work with when compared to Benning, which they had zero for. The CDC was also not very far, and the group could always easily fall back to the Vato's hideout like they did in a Season 2 deleted scene. And considering that the group stayed at the CDC for just one night, it's highly unlikely the Vato's gang met its demise during the same exact night, likely having been murdered before the CDC incident with Jenner. Now, was the CDC the best option? Hell fucking no. But it was definitely better than Benning in every conceivable way. I mean, just look at all of that valuable military-grade equipment. You know, the very reason people give for wanting to go to Fort Benning? Crazy how the group didn't take some time to grab some of that military-grade supplies. I sure as hell would have.
Well, what's wrong with trying? I mean, they could have always turned back after doing some recon, Cap. I mean, you just admitted it.
I mean, yeah, you could do some recon after a fucking 100-plus mile trip across a post-apocalyptic undead hellscape. But yeah, let's just waste resources and risk trekking that far just to potentially turn back, all with limited supplies and the least stacked team in the entire series. Fucking solid idea. You know what, why don't we just go ahead and check out Area 51 while we're at it?
Oh, you think you're clever, Captain Dipshit? Well, according to your reasoning, they never should have gone to DC.
Yeah, the trip to DC was hella risky, I'll give you that. But here's a little fun fact. The group that went to DC was a battle-hardened cast of capable survivors who were already used to being on the road. Rick's group survived the winter on the road, and Abraham's group was also used to a nomadic lifestyle. The team that went up north was fucking stacked. Hence, the comparison just doesn't work at all.
Okay, well, where the fuck were they supposed to go, you arrogant quote-unquote genius?
You know what, I'm glad you asked that. Glenn clearly had a map on hand, and these people were Georgia natives, so clearly they could have found some suitable locations to set up camp. For example, they could have gone to the Serenity off-grid farming community. By the way, I probably mispronounced that. This would have been an excellent place to settle down. They could have headed to the High Falls State Park, which has plenty of fresh water sources and even structures like cabins, basically being another location they could have slowly built into a sustainable safe haven. Then there's the fairly remote Noah's Ark Sanctuary, which has several structures, pre-built fences, and fresh water sources nearby. This is a great location to stay safe until you find something better and until your group improves their human capital. There's also plenty of small towns, including Woodbury. They could have fortified one of the tiny downtown areas of one of these towns just like Morgan did on his own. Suffice it to say, the group had plenty of options. And all of these are closer than Fort fucking Benning, and they're all less likely to have the same issues. They're all less likely to be targeted by raiders, less likely to be infested by walkers, and they're all less likely to be ransacked. If only someone in the group could have snapped Rick and Shane out of their desperation. It was fairly obvious the world had ended. Like, guys, the military gave Atlanta that General Sherman treatment. That's your sign, folks. So yeah, Benning was a fantastically stupid idea. Anyways, if you like this sort of content, please like, share, and fucking subscribe to the channel. Click the damn bell as well if you'd like to be notified when I publish a new video. And remember that you may opine anytime if you feel so inclined down in the comments section. I'm Captain Gold and I hope to see you in my next Gold Standard video.